So I would love to dive into flow with you today, and we can just start rolling into it.
Yeah.
I'm super curious what got you so fascinated and inspired by flow, and what your unique take on it, because there's many vantage points from which, flow is experienced and transmitted. So
Yeah. Flow is so hot right now. It's like every 5 minutes I see someone else, sharing their version of flow.
yeah.
I mean, it's funny because the more I think about it, like I used to give a different answer because like, it's more logical, but like I feel like I have gotten into flow states and flow psychology and flow spiritually, whatever you want to call it, from being lazy. I think laziness is a virtue. And when I was younger, like school, right? Like the mainstream school system was such BS that I would wait to the last minute to do everything. Like any kind of schoolwork or any kind of assignment or writing an essay. If I wasn't passionate about it, like 100%, I was like, nope, not worth my time and energy or attention. But then what would happen is as the deadline approached or whatever, like I'd come under stress and be like, oh, I gotta do that finally. And those are these peak moments of flow and performance. And that's where I discovered the flow state very young. This was starting when I was like maybe 10 or 11, probably before that. And I started to realize later in life that in those periods of deadlining, which is well studied now, is the deadlining effect in psychology and neuroscience. All my creative abilities would come online, time would slow down, epic ideas would come in, I'd have max, peak performance and creativity. And if everything became effortless and I was in that perfect zone of like, it was just difficult enough that I had to use all my energy and attention, but it was just easy enough, so to speak, or it just challenged me in skill level enough that I could hit that flow line. And so later, finding personal development and going really deep into the coaching, mastermind, yogic practice, I started to actually study flow psychology. And it was, Jamie Wheal and Stephen Kotler and Rise of Superman and their work that really put it on the map psychologically for me. And then I really started to study, high performers like Tony Robbins and, that sphere. And that kind of got me into the coaching world. And then I got into retreats and I started teaching workshops and retreats. And really like that vectored me into realizing that, flow is our natural state. And it's where all great art and business and performance in any industry comes from. And there's a science to it and there's mechanics to it. And there's a unique way that everyone can plug into that. And so I just kind of made that my main thing.
That's beautiful. Thank you for doing that work and connecting people into their power source. Yeah, sovereignty. So a couple of questions I have. Flow psychology. So I've tuned into Stephen Kotler and Jamie Wheal quite a bit and laser dialed into the science. However, something started channeling through for me several years ago called flow psychology. And it was more based on what I was receiving when I was tuning into the super conscious source field. And all of those mechanics were being revealed to me from that space of unification and oneness. And it was synthesizing all the way down from the macro to the micro. And so I would fill in the details and then I would reverse engineer it too to see, okay, so we're here in the micro, where are we actually going? What is the
Right.
focal point? What is the directionality? So I'm curious to know your experience around flow psychology, or if there was something in particular you were plugging into.
Yeah, I mean, the heavily scientific, view of it, I think is very valuable, especially for people who are left hemisphere dominant and understand things that way. I definitely started that way, but the more I've read the literature and, all these studies they're doing, the more I realize that, science, unfortunately, big science follows the money. So who's funding the study and what result do they want to, produce? Because, we can massage statistics to get any result we want if you really study science and effect sizes and things like that. And, I trust in a lot of the the studies that, you know, these people in this industry are using. And I've started to realize it actually is not as useful for me. And so it's not something I focus on with my clients. It's much more about ikigai for me, which is a Japanese term that basically translates to reason for being. And it's an intersection between what you're really passionate about, which these are things you can't really quantify, what you're really passionate about, what you're really good at, what gives you a sense of service to the world, or like, you know, showing up in service to humanity, and then what you can get paid for. So what's lucrative and actually is marketable. And so at the center of those four things is known as ikigai. And there's a whole Japanese philosophy around this. And a lot of life coaches, school counselors have used this throughout the decades. And so for me, it's a little more emergent. It's an emergence. So you won't just figure it out by studying, you know, your reaction time or measuring how many hours it takes you to build a funnel. You know, that stuff's one side of it. But really, it's through experimentation. You know, what experiment do you need to run in your life, in the art or business project that you're working on? What experiments do you need to run with the type of partner or relationships or your tribe that you feel the most satisfied with? And when you do this enough, you start to actually pinpoint what your unique flow psychology is. Someone's might be data and analytics. Someone else's might be dancing and embodiment and sensuality. Someone else's might be artistic and through the voice. So everyone's going to have a different way. And so, you know, the psychological perspective is valuable, but I tend to take a more holistic perspective with that.
Yeah. So out of curiosity, what are some of those preconditions that are most effective for you in catalyzing flow and staying in it too, and continuing to stay seamlessly dialed to it?
Right. I mean, for me, it's one part spontaneous and one part like planned. So for example, creating content is one of my favorite ways to flow, whether it's written or spoken or video. So I make sure I do a lot of interviews. I interview people on my podcast all the time, and I get asked to do interviews a lot. And so those are actually flow triggers for me. So this is a very present one, is what we're doing right now. Is I get into a state of flow before it, and after I just go into a massive state of flow. A lot of it for me is the body. So the number one flow technique is breath work for me. It's very simple. Every day I'm doing some kind of breath work, and I'm doing some kind of movement practice. So this morning, you know, it looks like some Kundalini Kriyas, and it looks like body surfing here in Costa Rica. And that's very simple, and it instantly has me in a state of dropped in, relaxed awareness and performance. Freestyle rap, spoken word poetry is huge for me. Another one that, you know, is probably the best flow force factor for anyone is sexuality and sensuality. And, you know, having a partner to practice with or doing it on your own is an instant hack into every good hormone, neurotransmitter, and frame of reference that you can imagine. And so that one actually is probably one of the ultimates, which also involves breath work, oddly enough.
Yes. And the opening and the expansion of ourselves so that that potential can emerge and that power. Another interesting thing. So I've danced with this in my creations because I had a holographic avatar that was essentially downloaded to me with these 13 primary spheres of embodiment. And they're the vortices that we run free energy flow through. And of course, they're ultimately infinite, but in the human body that we're in now, transforming into these new divine cosmic beings and new species, these are the primary ones. And each one correlated to everything that you just spoke into, and also something in our physical world. So it would be the non-physical, the intangible practices like breath work and tantra and vipassana yoga and all of these things that we do to kind of catalyze that movement of energy in our body. And then how to actually direct the flow or the Tao once we have generated enough of it in our body to create what we want to be experiencing in our physical world. So I'm curious if you have had any kind of a synthesized structure come through that you find to be really effective in your service or even just in your own experience.
Yeah, you know, this is something I'm working on actively. So I've been building an online course, Flow State Mastery, where I've basically synthesized the 6 technique suites. So there's like a couple techniques in each that work for me And it's more of a philosophy than a system, although I do desire to create something like that. And I'm kind of waiting for it to drop in. I'm not forcing it. Basically, the philosophy is this. No matter how long it takes, you could have a 20-minute morning routine, you can have a 2-hour morning routine. It doesn't even have to be in the morning, just whenever you want to get into your flow. However long it takes, until you're fully activated, inspired, and online in your body, so you feel present in your body, you feel clear in your mind, and you feel open in your spirit, so there's passion flowing. Anything you do, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a business, whether it's a workout, is not going to be as effective. And you can still do it, but we all are looking for that performance, force factor, effectiveness, being efficient, right? And having fun. That's the biggest thing, is having fun while we do it. So, you know, the system for me, the order it usually goes in is meditation, some kind of meditation, pick a technique, any flavor. You know, I like to pair my meditation with breath work, because if I'm really mental or in a lot of loops or stories, or there's a lot of mental energy, if I just try to sit and watch that, it's not very productive. So breath work actually helps me clear that. So breath work's the second one, meditation and breath work, which I usually pair almost always. And then some kind of self-programming. So, you know, Joe Dispenza, Bruce Lipton's work is going around a lot right now, and they're great resources I've used for visualization and affirmation and writing out my reality. So recently for me, it's been looking like unearthing beliefs. So understanding the beliefs I have about money and sex and power and my body and my attention, right? And I'm surprised every time to find new things and root out negative beliefs that are unconscious, and then install new beliefs and reinforce new beliefs of, you know, everything is actually working out in my favor at all times if I have the awareness to learn the lesson. That's a big one, is self-programming. And yeah, after that, some kind of movement and nutrition hack. So I'm really into intermittent fasting. I'm a huge superfood fanatic. I work with a lot of Chinese herbs and supplements for high performance, turning on my mitochondria, you know, detoxing, creating energy in my physical body. And I do yoga, I do functional strength, I hike, and, you know, I lift weights and just combine all these different, you know, primal movements. I don't really ascribe to one thing. And then the last two are tantra and reading. So, and tantra is pretty wide. It can be vocal activation, it can be sensuality, sexuality, it can be bioenergetics, shaking, catharsis, moving emotion. So I work with rage, I work with sorrow. Like, that's a really subtle one that is more of, it's not every day, but if it's there, I'll go through it. And the last one's reading. Like, I mainly listen to lectures these days and audiobooks, but I'm always reading something, like always listening to something. Some of my favorites recently have been, you know, Terrence McKenna is one of my gurus, Jordan Peterson. I've been reading Mircea Eliade, Ancient Tantra, you know, just things that stimulate and inspire me. And so those 6 kind of factors, if I'm touching at least, you know, 50% of those, if not all of them every day, I'm personally putting myself in the best position to be in a high level flow with a capital F. And this is what I teach my clients as well.
Yes, amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. You're just a storehouse of wisdom and knowledge and resources and information and rich life experience. Thank you for taking the journey to integrate and embody all of that.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah. It's profound. There's a lot there. So, there was one question that came through. Let me see if I can tap back into it. Okay. So do you ever find, so this is an interesting thing I've discovered in my experience, that my psychic capacities have become so refined that even when I'm listening to the science, or I'm tuning into other teachers and leaders who are doing extraordinary work in the world, I'll sense and see the evolution of the information. And so I find that information itself and the language itself is always evolving exponentially and in the here and now. So do you find that you notice those subtle nuances when you're tuning into things, or that you can pinpoint or see the evolution, even in the context of science, and this is where it gets really fascinating for me, shifting into the realm of the supernatural, because if we are the constructors of science, because we are observing the reality and looking to focalize a specific result, then we have the capacity then to not only alter the science, but transcend it and create entirely new fields in which energy behaves completely different, and we're released from, you know, the matrix, any type of conceptual rules or ideas. So do you find that that's something that you experience when you're tuning into just different information sources?
Totally. And, you know, actually in my human design, I forget the exact channel. I believe it's the channel of openness. I'm a manifestor. I'm hypersensitive to tonality. So a lot of times I'm not even listening to words. It's the tone of the speaker. That's why I love audio lectures and books, because they're transmitting an energetic that's beyond the words. The words are just, and it helps if they're highly intellectual, because I'm a word geek and a linguist myself. So I can receive the words really well. But for me, it's tone. When you speak about new energy science and, you know, that the power of the transmission, it's the tonality. And words hold power with spelling.
Yes.
So any disempowering language or negative language or scarcity language in scientific work is a red flag to me, because that means they're either bought and paid for by the money market matrix, whatever you want to call it, and not the good guys, usually, or you know, it's old paradigm. It's like Renaissance medieval type thinking in like a 3D universe with physics and blah blah blah. You know, like where it's billiard balls, everything's cause and effect, everything's apprehendable by the mind. And you know, the greatest scientist, and I'm a huge Osho advocate.
Yeah.
The greatest scientist was Buddha and like the sages, because that's science is just, you know, science and spirituality are not mutually exclusive. And I was talking about this in a podcast the other day with my brother Justin Fairman. All the top scientists, including Einstein, Bohm, you know, all the guys that got deep into quantum physics and all these things became mystics.
Yes.
They actually abandoned being agnostic, atheist, or materialist, because true science is no different than what we call spirituality. And actually, the love for understanding and the love for matter in the universe unlocks the non-material and the other parts of the universe that are energy and frequency and vibration.
Oh, it's beautiful. I'm tuning into the Sufi mystic and poet Rumi right now, and just how he entered into those tantric spaces with the cosmos and received those transmissions, which are highly refined and scientific in nature, but they were all coming from direct channeled revelation and downloads. And so we all have this capacity to access this internally, which I think is the most fascinating thing. So there was a bit of a turning point in my journey where I still continuously attune to different information, especially as it finds me, or if I feel drawn or magnetized to something. But there was a point where after I took a 10-year journey traveling solo, just synthesizing all types of religions and sciences and different modalities of spirituality and all of this. And I came to a space where my guidance was, now can you attune to you and learn how to trust implicitly the information that you're receiving, which was kind of an edge for me at that time, because I was so used to dialing in to different resources. And so I started to do that, and it had profound, far-reaching benefits across all domains of my life and in the cultivation of expanded capacities and abilities, because I had to learn then how to just stay fully connected to my power source and trust and know with absolute certainty that what I was receiving was accurate, and then shift into the realm of experimentation with that data to see how it was playing out in the physical and you know, and all of that. So so what is your insight around that? I have a sense that is where we are evolving as a collective. Learning how to get into mass group flow is going to require us each to be powerfully connected to our own sovereign our own sovereign flow, and then living laser dialed in according to our high intuition from moment to moment to moment. And that's an interesting, and, you know, sometimes in that though, everything is fulfilled. So the planning, the resources coming to us tuning into things, us just purely trusting our own guidance, and all of this, all of it unfolds itself in that Tao. But yeah, no.
Yeah, I mean, this is amazing that it's happening to everyone at different paces, but it's happening to everyone. And anyone who's tapped in and dialed into ascension, descension, the golden age, whatever you want to call it, the Aquarian age, this is happening. And it's highly important, actually. I wrote a post on this recently, to actually self-source some intuition and get your information from there. Even if you're getting information from the outside, you got to check it against your intuition, right? Because, you know, if we're in a dark age and we're in Kali Yuga, actually it's apparently Dwapara Yuga, someone, dear brother in Bali was telling me, which is like just coming out of the dark age, right? We're just starting to like shift out of an age where basically the information streams are fucked. Like, we have to return to first principles and actually relearn sense making, right? Because things don't make sense. And like, if you don't believe me, just turn on Fox News, turn on CNN, turn on MSNBC. You know, the stuff that's coming out of the pipes of mainstream culture is propaganda. And a lot of it's obviously so, if you have any amount of sensitivity. So what does that mean is that you can't take authority and hierarchy as your information and data source. We're returning to a new way of sense making where, yeah, it's internal. It's your internal compass. It's your intuition. Does it feel good in your body? That's what my signature is. I get goosebumps or I feel it in my body. You know, I wouldn't recommend to anyone that they go to a university or to a politician or a religious official today in 2019 and get their information from them. Not to say you can't learn from other people, because I do all the time, but I'm restricting my studies to masters and people who embody their message, because most other people, especially if they're not, you know, embodied in a sense of, you know, us being a spirit in a body, or said another way, they're not full spectrum. So they're not just moving from a persona or ego mind. There's something deeper. You can just, it's a sense, it's a felt sense. It's not the language they're using. It's how they show up in a human form, in their mission, in integrity and accountability. How do they own their language? How do they own their relationships? You know, it's a subtle thing. And the only thing I can keep track of that many things at once and actually be in that way where you can trust is your intuition. You're not going to be able to do it with your logical mind. You're not going to be able to calculate, you know, who has which message and how does it stack up with the data. And you can try, but that will just probably create a lot of anxiety and overwhelm, which is what it has done for me in the past, which is why I've shifted to trusting and studying flow more and being around people that are doing the same thing.
Oh yeah, it's so hyper activating when everybody's in the same potent cosmic container. Wow. That was one of the insights that I'm receiving through that, because my being won't even let me operate for more than 30 minutes if I get into my logical brain anymore. So what I realized, and even in doing the research, is that flow states activate the gamma waves, and they actually transcend neural firing. And so what I was realizing is, okay, where am I accessing my data? Because it felt like it was from the field. It wasn't always directly in my body, but it was orbiting up here somewhere. So my soul star chakra, which is where we plug into, you know, the pure source spring, the wellspring of pure consciousness, so we can access our vertical alignment. And it was a visionary psychic energy. And I had to expand my vision out far and wide in order to even access it. So it wasn't coming from my actual brain, it was coming from my mind, my super mind. But it was in a different location, even energetically and spiritually and physically and all of this. And that helped me it was kind of like my self-authorization to get out of my own head, because I would be curious, okay, when I'm in these elucidated states, where is all of that data coming from? Because I could associate it with thought or thinking or all of this, but it was more of a visionary download that I was getting. It was psychic intelligence that was coming through from the larger network of mind. And so just even being able to identify that distinction was super supportive for me. And it allowed me to, like you said earlier, when we get into stories or cycles or autonomous mind activity, to go directly into meditation and let that clear until our consciousness elevates into a more transcendental field, and then access the vision, then access the information.
Right. And I love that you brought up the brainwaves, because a lot of culture in the mainstream is built around the beta frequency, which is, active, super fast, problem solving, alert consciousness, which is really powerful if your house is burning down, or you need to pay your taxes, or, you need to figure out something that's highly technical and time based. But it's not a great state to stay in all the time. In fact, it causes a lot of stress and cortisol release. So, the gamma state is super powerful because you go into a super high frequency where you can access these non-ordinary states of consciousness and information that's, where psychic abilities come online. I find that a lot of the time I'm in the alpha wave frequency, which is more of calm, relaxed energy. And I'm like alert and aware, but I'm not stressed. And so that's what breath work really allows for me. And, and then I can choose and dial, that's the beauty of the mind. It's a tool. It's actually not the master. It's meant to be tuned and dialed to what you actually need in the moment.
That's beautiful. I love that you spend time in the alpha, and that you just chill there and let yourself, it just feels like such an open space of receptivity, really, to magnetize and allow things to come in and ultimately build gamma.
Right.
Yeah. So one other thing that I want to tune into with you is supernatural capacities and our ability to architect our reality. So, well, this is a fascinating thing altogether, because I find myself, even with the languaging of the word create, and I still utilize it a lot, because on one level we're physically, we've got our hands in our creations, and we're making things, building things, creating things. And also there's just a redirect or an influence of energy, or a transformation or an alchemization of energy that's always happening. So what are some of the most effective ways that you have found to manifest instantaneously inside of your reality, and what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, you can get really nuanced with this, I think, and complex. But the simplest way that always works, and it was the first to come online for me, and I think it's the first to come online for a lot of people, is synchronicity. So if you are able to train yourself, at first it'll just happen to you. You'll just start noticing repeating numbers. You might start noticing that you think of someone and then they appear physically or in your inbox or whatever. Or you notice like word and symbol patterns. So, you've been thinking about someone who's a Pisces, and you start seeing fish everywhere. And those fish are on places that when you go there, you feel excitement or you feel inspiration. And then you meet someone you're really connected to, and then they introduce you to this person. And it's like the synchronicities start building. And a good brother of mine always calls them, it's a KPI for how tapped in you are. It's a key performance indicator. The synchronicity is a performance indicator of, are you on a timeline that's exciting and elevating to you and leads to more health, wealth, and happiness and relationships. And so you want to talk about instant manifestation. If you're clear and you know what you want and you're in touch with desire, you can let synchronicity and the stream of life take you there. And it will happen through numbers, it will happen through people, symbols, places, events, anything. And that's like step one. Then you can get really nuanced and position yourself in that stream. But I think for most people, that's the practice. And for me, when I forget all the time to do all the nuanced techniques and yogic practices and spell casting, I'm still having a human experience, but synchronicity is the thing that is always present in my life, always.
Yeah.
And it's always inviting me to remember, to remember, to remember.
It's the best. It's so good. I'm just the Arthur C. Clarke. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And so I
Yeah.
imagine that when we're in super flow or super fluidity and we're harmonized in our inner outer worlds, then that continuously is unfolding all around us. And one of the fun places that I love to go with that is that, so it's like the feedback mechanism of it. So just in the simple notion of ask and it's yours. And there's no more steps. So there's something like you mentioned in there around, tuning into someone or something, and then they appear, or something occurring like that, and how subtle that can be sometimes, because it may just be for a split second, but then it appears for us. But dialing in those mechanics and going, okay, so if I thought of that for a split second and it showed up, or I tuned into that, what can I be tuning into psychically, energetically, visually, in order to deliberately orchestrate my experience? And one of my favorite places to go with that is one, just programming the hologram itself and coding it with instructions. And then the other one is in the tantric space. So the way that I experience it is literally getting into the embodiment of the whole. So taking that macro and bringing it all the way down into the discrete quantum molecules of my body and just coursing it in. So if I'm asking for something, this is really powerful for generating rapidly. I'll connect into the light or the soul consciousness of the world, and I'll speak directly to it and just put out a potent, clear, activated, either vocal request or desire or internal, and then I'll just direct that stream into myself. So I don't even jump out to do anything. I just direct it in and allow it to orgasmically course through my body until that session feels complete, and just breathe it all the way through. And then whatever intuitive revelations or insights came through for me to enact, I'll shift into that space, or I'll pivot into that as soon as I am finished and complete with those sessions. But yeah.
Right. That's a beautiful distinction. Is like, you don't have to do anything. Like there's no effort involved. There can be, but it doesn't have to be in that style, And I think the true art of manifestation, or the law of attraction, whatever you want to call it, it combines masculine and feminine ways of manifestation, and like, the directing source energy and the feeling, and through pleasure and through the oracle of the feminine. That can be a more feminine style, and then the masculine style is using the voice, in my experience, to command, and also having vision and decisiveness. And so when those merge, now you have a very powerful engine for your creativity, and to bring in, the money or the people or the opportunities or the timing. You can really get subtle with it. And I think most people will state a desire. I know I used to do this. They'll state a desire, but then be unwilling to follow the inklings or the small actions or the synchronicities that'll actually place you on the same energetic as that desire coming to fruition, right?
It's such a micro calibration too. It's like, I call it source sports, where we just stay connected to the source, or our source of intuition, and we just be in that flow, engaging it throughout the day and until it feels complete for us. And then it's completely nonlinear, and everything always works out and leads us directly to the thing that we requested or envisioned. And it's so rapid now. I mean, it's always been rapid in my experience, but I mean, the big things are becoming extraordinary. Like same hour, same day, last week I was doing just a ritual, and every single thing that I was calibrating to in the session happened before I completed the session. And so I asked myself if it actually manifested before I even did the session. So it was one of those time warp moments. I love that so much. It's
the best.
Yes, it's so malleable. And that's the glory and the beauty of it too, because if it is so malleable and there are infinite possibilities, I mean, just feeling into what that actually means for the acceleration of health and well-being and planetary restructuring and all of this on the larger scale, and what we can actually do when our consciousness and our energy are really dialed.
Right.
It's profound.
Game changer. Well, the whole civilization operating under this science and this law, is in a golden age. And, the legends of Lemuria, Mu, Atlantis, these lost civilizations, that's like the fidelity they were holding in science, technology, politics, art, business, industry, whatever you want to talk about. A human civilization that's at that level, if everyone's in a collective field of that, anything's possible. I mean, forget like building spaceships and like flying to other planets. We're talking about hyperlight travel with thought, transmitting consciousness, instant manifestation of life force, whether that's in an organism, whether that's in a technology, whether that's in healing the physical cell or the DNA, or changing it and morphing it. And I think a lot of our educational system has spent a lot of its time convincing us that's not how it is. Because all children understand this. They play these imagination games, right? Not really games. They're fresh from source, and they understand the real way the universe works and what the structure of matter actually teaches us. The more you go down into the micro, the more it reflects the macro. And this hologram that we're in, it responds to our will. That's really the basis of this. It's co-created. It's not a static environment.
Yeah, immediately responsive and benevolent. Oh man, so much juice in there. That's how I how I discovered my magic, and I'm feeling this for you too. It's just you came into a system that was reversed, and that you knew needed to be reverse engineered, and that's why it didn't quite resonate in your system, and you found alternative ways to adapt and connect into your flow. And the children that are coming onto the planet now, they're in, it's beyond even trust and knowing and certainty. They're there, and they're staying there, and it's the emanation of all that they are. They're coming in with full remembrance of who and what they are, and they're going to be our greatest teachers moving forward. And when I was younger, I used to have dreams that I was magical, and still continuously just flying in all of my dreams, as though I'm swimming underwater but through the air, and having all of these capacities and commanding my reality, and supernatural forces and things appearing instantaneously through the hologram, just phasing in. And I would wake up and I would be so jubilant, just lit, because I could feel the resonance of it carried through from my dream state. And then I would drop back into the density at that time of, the current reality. And so I was compelled to uncover and explore the mechanics and dynamics of reality and who and what we truly are, and to really attune to that, and continuously still just dialing it in and allowing it to inform me. It's just the most fascinating thing for me to continue exploring that, and to think of or envision what is possible for us on a global scale when we're totally calibrated. And that's, paradise. It's an interesting thing, the new earth and paradise and the golden age and the diamond age and all of these utopian ideals that we all carry. But what it actually is so potent and profound, the actual elucidated embodiment of that intelligence and that awareness, and living it through into the reality, and not only bringing those frequencies down into this dimensional octave, but also rising, elevating this dimensional octave up into those realms. The implications of it and the power of it, part of the way that I started to tune into my own psychic technological capacities was by connecting into the ancient Egyptian technologies and going, okay, what was really going on here, and plugging into my heritage, and having all of those technologies downloaded to me so that I could start utilizing them in my experience, and then ultimately on a global scale. So there's a whole 5 to 10 year period that I went through. 5 where I wasn't outspoken and overt about what I was doing because it just wasn't the time for it yet. And then 5 years of kind of slowly starting to trickle it into the world, and just even opening up to feeling okay with being seen at that level, because some of the stuff that I was playing with was really powerful and profound, and I didn't know how it was going to be received. And just, a whole 5 years of calibrating the quantum self, going into the mainframe and going into the main avatar to start to elevate and enhance the collective consciousness so that this information would even be perceivable and receivable at a visceral level without, short-circuiting somebody's system.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just feeling that.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yeah,
It's a great point. It's a great point. What's coming through is, meeting the dominant mainstream energetic where it's at, because there's a lot of people maybe that are channeling super high frequency energies, entities, technologies, whatever you want to talk about, like you're describing. And I've had this experience on some level too. And if you just start at that frequency and then go out into the world, this is when there's like that short circuit. And so the master teachers of the planet, the way I see it is, when you're in an iron age or a dark age with golden age technology or ideas, you get to, massage that in and really like code it and create an ease and a compassionate but still very fierce entry point. And that requires skill and discernment, right? Mm-hmm. And so how these ideas will be received, is everything, especially if our mission, like, I know a big part of my mission is to liberate and awaken humanity, really help people unfold their true self and sovereignty. And a lot of people just aren't ready for the truth or like the intensity of some of these transmissions immediately. They have to choose that. And so that's a lesson I've had to learn the hard way in a lot of ways, being raised in Texas and traveling the world and being in these scenes and having these visions and speaking the way I know I can speak, especially when I'm really, heated up and talking about the taboo. People aren't ready. I've been, verbally, psychically attacked. I've been, that pushback is real, because some people aren't ready to be unplugged from the matrix, like Morpheus talked about in the movie. And they'll actually defend the distortions because they identify with them as a source of energy and life. And so, respect to that, and knowing that that's there. How then do we as light workers, etc., interface with that in service in a way that will actually be understood and not be, zapped or, out of coherence.
Yes. Well, that's it. Thank you for bringing that forward. That's hugely important. That was a major lesson that I had to learn on my path too. And what I was brought back to, because a lot of these technologies were revealed to me because I was learning how to master unconditional love. And that was just the reality for me. It was learning how to actually merge and unify with all of the things that I had an aversion to, or that I was resisting in any way, whether it was within myself or within my reality, and actually piercing through all of those veils of illusion and actually being able to find and focalize the core truth that was present in myself and all beings in all moments. And so then the mastery for me became, in the face of the pushback or the limitation programming and all of this, could I hold that perspective of pure source and allow that to be the transformational catalyst, just that perspective. So whenever I go into a space where I'm meeting a being, I'm just holding that wide open field and connecting directly into the soul light of them. And all that I'm seeing is the source. And that has been an ongoing mastery for me as well, because there are certain moments, of course, when my patterns have gotten plugged into other people's patterns, and And then we do that dance, and then eventually that's dissolved because I'm able to identify it at that point and shift it. But that, yeah, that field of empathy, that field of unconditional love, and also in that there's a discernment around, you know, who we uniquely are called to serve and are meant to serve, and, you know, just being able to be with whatever is presenting itself in our current reality, in our current experience. But love is true, resonant, unconditional love is the unifying language, no matter who we are, no matter where we are in our evolutionary journey. That's the tonality, that's the resonance that allows for great transformation in any situation.
Totally. So true.
So that's the primary mastery, and that's how all the, you know, every time I was going into these deep, I'd say there are more potent, mystical, alchemical experiences of, you know, just different ways that I was integrating to wholeness, to oneness, being, you know, learning how to not separate off from parts of myself, learning how to shift out of victim entirely and into total empowerment and being the one, and being fully sovereign in my quantum embodiment, and having that unification with the self and with the all. And so there was a deep analysis and awareness of the inner workings of my own consciousness, and still identifying those places and spaces and cleansing them out, just completely cleansing and purifying them. And that's, you know, where I really connect into the diamond intelligence, is clearing all of those facets so that I see myself purely from all angles, no matter what, which allows me to meet the source when it shows up for me, in whatever way it's expressing in that moment.
Yeah. The beautiful metaphor, the diamond, the Vajrayana path, you know. What's interesting about the diamond energy is it's so piercing and like hardened and crystalline. So it's very high, you know, energetic texture, and yet it doesn't, you know, resist any reflection. It has that penetration and that beautiful, like, it can be filtered with any light and it will transmute anything. And so that's yeah, I think of it in the kind of the Buddhist tantra path of the Vajrasattva, you know, of the diamond body, the diamond mind that is cultivated through high level discernment, like razor blade discernment, but also tempered with that compassion and transparency, so that, you know, no matter the situation or the people or the environment, you can actually see, like you said, the truth of source, but still cut like a diamond. And that's a subtlety that we all get to practice.
Yes, and super valuable for navigation as well.
Yeah.
And, you know, that being birthed through tremendous pressure and trial by fire as well.
Yes.
I know my soul certainly, you know, scenarios that in all, according to the logic and the intuition of my mind and even my greatest faculties, I've entered into deeply challenging situations by will and with great conscientiousness, because my soul let me know that there was something there for me to uncover, something there for me to synthesize. There was gold to be accessed, and they were by no stretch of the imagination easy challenges or easy experiences to enter into. And so I could always see the side by side, right? So there's my intuition and that laser sharp discernment, seeing all of the subtle nuances and intricacies and dynamics, going, are you sure you want to go into that? And then my soul saying, yeah, you're sure you want to go into this and you're ready for it, because this is your next level of real life mastery training. Because where else does that really happen except on the field and in those potent containers of realization and transformation? So I intentionally selected some very challenging, just since my youth, really, catalyst after catalyst after catalyst, and just going full-fledged into the flames and allowing myself to be transformed, which this is another interesting thing around why I have, or an insight around why I have peacocks throughout my branding and all of this. So peacocks, if you look at the feathers of a peacock, it contains, the wild exotic animals on the planet. It has zebra, it has leopard, it has lion, it has flamingo feathers, it has all of these different beautiful animals synthesized into its feathering. And peacocks actually eat poison and transform it into beauty. And so that was one of the other, I also correlate the peacock with the diamond, because that's how the diamond is created, is by going into the murky waters and coming out totally clarified. And then the peacock being able to take in and ingest the seemingly uningestible, and not only ingest it, but learn how to fiercely love it and embrace it as the self. And having that birth new levels of power and richness and beauty within itself is an emanation of that.
The peacock's a powerful symbol in alchemy as well. A lot of the ancient alchemical texts would speak of, the distillation and transformation of metals, which are metaphors for consciousness. The peacock is a strong symbol in Latin. I think it's cauda pavonis. It's the symbol that precedes the final transformation of the beauty distilled, like you said, from the venom, from the shadow, from the shit that gets composted and alchemized. And then, the peacock also is like the phoenix, where it's a bird, so it's the nature of the mind, right? It has wings, but it is on the earth firmly, and its beauty and all these colors speak to, like, the richness of the tapestry of life. So from all the different experiences and textures, like you were mentioning, it contains all those other power animals. It's like this nodal point that's a signal to the mind, the divine mind, that the transformation is almost complete, right? It's one of these initiations. And it's so wild too that the peacock is it doesn't have any predators. Because it's not really able to defend itself, like to create that plumage and that grandiosity. It's not like a super agile bird, right? But it doesn't have any natural predators. At least I don't that I understand. Maybe big cats might be able to take one down, but it's fascinating that nature created such a beautiful symbol for us.
It couldn't actually have any predators because of so I'm just going to correlate this to consciousness. In those embodied states of diamond awareness, the auric field itself is so palpable and so strong that it instantly transmutes anything that comes into its presence. So even if a being doesn't always present as their higher self, they will always present as their higher self in that field, because the love is so real and so strong that it just acts as an invitation. And it's it's magic. It's real magic.
Wow.
And the aura is actually, the light in the aura itself is also so strong that it creates that transmutative effect, which is really quite stunning. It's something that I experience with my clients often, and so I've had to really dial in, like, my becoming and my continuing to become, because just the field itself generates so much for other people when they come in it, and it's such a gift for me to be able to witness that. And it's so humbling and delightful, and to just even spend a portion of time with a being and open up the windows of perception to what's possible, and to just share space.
So good. That speaks to, like, again, the non-doing, the effortlessness of flow. A sufficiently powerful field changes on its own. It will change anyone within it and anything. And so there's nothing to do sometimes other than just holding the field. And this is, again, the Buddha field, or the field that is created by these masters. That's why, things circumambulate around them. Disciples, students, doctrines, food, mana, like there's a whole swirl that happens just because the field is so powerful and being held that it automatically is mutating anything within it, to the point where enemies become disciples, right? Someone who intended harm has a complete, this happens with Christ too, obviously, has a complete reformation, and on the core level gets transmuted by that. And I imagine that's what the peacock's doing in nature. It's so beautiful and so unique. How could you want to destroy it? You'd end up worshiping it.
Yeah. Always. And one of the other the gorgeous effects of that field too is that it's even, I call it the field beyond creation. So even beyond all the play that we get to experience with our manifestation technologies and all of this, is just the pure emanation of being, in which, you notice I always imagine Buddha's laughing with this, had this big old grin on his face, because everything actually happens for us, and it happens automatically without us having to ask or do a thing, because we're so at one. And we're so in that harmonic flow with the self and with the all, that it just comes to us. It just shows up, and it shows up in ways that are far beyond the conception of not only our mind, but even our own greatest imaginings. And that is really the surprise and the delight of being in that field, because it's where the wonder and the awe really come to life, because it's, wow, I think that's so resonant to my soul, and it's so beautiful and enlivening to my heart. And I couldn't even conjure that myself. Some dimension of me conjured it, but it wasn't this dimension. And so it's this beautiful, intimate moment of, rapture in a lot of ways, where it's like, wow, we're a part of this grand orchestra, and it's so kind and loving and benevolent, and it's here to really support us with aligning to all that we truly desire. And it's so effortless and easy if we allow it to be.
I'll hold to that.
So how are you feeling?
Yeah, I mean, I'm realizing in this moment how much I guess, I'm going to answer the question. I'm feeling very grounded and expanded at the same time, this conversation. And I realize the diamond energy or the peacock energy is not something I often work with at all. I work a lot with, archangelic and golden frequencies and violet flame. But this is so it's bringing online the beautiful diamond Vajra, sides of me, that I feel very connected to that lineage. And actually I've spent time around peacocks, funnily enough, in sanctuaries, and also at a beautiful space where I sat in ceremony. They had peacocks everywhere, and the energetic there is so powerful. And I'm just fascinated by your involvement and energetic within the diamond peacock. Imagining a peacock made of energetic diamonds or something. It's this really
Yes.
unique frequency.
Yes. Maybe that'll be my next fun photo shoot. Some kind of epic costume built out where I get to actually be that. Yeah, I can see the energetics of that starting to fill into your holographic field. So that's really exquisite. See all of it. Coming online. That's beautiful.
It's good. It's good.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and the archangels. I love them so. They're massive, beautiful beings that are just ever present and super fun to play with.
Yes.
Yeah.
Team angel for sure.
Totally. Team angel. I love one of the things I love about tapping into really they're my companions, honestly. That there's so many points in my life where I was just on a solo journey, and I actually learned the art of relationship because I became so intimate with my supernatural networks, as I call them. But, you know, all the archangels and the galactic and celestial councils, Mother Gaia, the elementals and the fairies and all the beautiful creatures that we have to connect into, and just really feeling their unique personalities come online too, and just really getting to dance and co-create with them in different ways, and in the power of that. So one of the ways that I love to support people with accessing their magic too, instead of attempting to do everything just in their own power, is to really know that they have these legions and these cosmic beings and these earthly beings surrounding at all times, and we can all access that intelligence just by asking, just by tapping in, just by requesting their presence. And that's so diverse and eclectic, you know, just like nature is. There's an infinite wellspring of intelligences that we can tap. You know, we can tap in and channel Tesla and Einstein. We can tap in
Right.
and channel all of these intercosmic beings, and also, you know, there's just so many ways that we can access novel streams of information and allyship.
Totally. It's really just tuning the receiver, you know, or like plugging in the coordinates. And this is a really fun thing to experiment with in your daily life is, yeah, like you said, I love, like, yeah, Beethoven, Mozart, Einstein. They're coded into the hologram, and we all know their signature because they're kind of in mainstream culture. And you can do this with people even that aren't, of just like, you know, channeling and tuning into that energetic. You know, I often am channeling and tuned into, you know, Carl Jung and Plato and Pythagoras, and, you know, these characters or philosophers that have so been part of my imagination and my rational growth, but also now it's just like, it's a frequency, or like it's a flavor in my thinking and my thoughts and my speech and my life. And then also the synchronicity will show up and plug me into that even more, because I'm in that energetic, and I like those flavors, you know. And you can do it with living people, you can do it with the past, you can do it with the future as well, you know, because, you know, I was just watching a TED Talk, one of the banned TED Talks you can find on YouTube, about remote viewing and ESP. And like, yeah, it's just as easy. And this is like a CIA like think tank that was going on for 20 years, right? So this is like hardcore scientific types. You know, they realized doing experiments that it's just as easy to remote view what's in my pocket right now, some object in my pocket, versus something that happened 75 years ago, or something that will happen 2 weeks from now. There's no difference between that for your mind. And you know, it's wild to think about that and realize that, you know, if you know the words, if you feel the feeling, if you are of the will or of the desire, all resources, all minds, all matter, energy is available right now. It's the only time it can be available. And so then it just becomes kind of a game. For me, it's fun. It's like a game of like, what frequency do I want to embody? What energetic do I want to attune to today? Or what do I need for this situation? That's a lot of the work I do with archetypes, right? And supporting people to turn on and really embody archetypes. Because, you know, if you're walking into XYZ situation, there's archetypal energetics that can help you plug into that situation. You know, you don't have to get stuck in one and try to like fit that into every situation. You know, that's what a lot of people are doing, and they're not experiencing flow because of it.
Right. That's massive. Just the adaptability. Yeah, the adaptability to all of our own and collective archetypes, and having fun with that too. It's so much, you know, it's like the creative dance comes alive and we're on stage, and we're, you know, and there are all these really rich, beautiful, authentic, creative, expressive parts of ourselves, and we get to embody them all in different moments. And I think it keeps it fresh too, and novel and passion fueled as well, because we get to shift and change and adapt so much in our day-to-day or moment-to-moment. And I just like really, 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 really deeply appreciate your depth and your expansiveness and your complexity and all that you have calibrated to and created, you know, neurobiological space to even synthesize within your embodiment. Just there's so much to you as a being on so many levels that I see, and I deeply respect, appreciate, and honor. Just thank you for being.
Thank you. I fully receive that, Solara. And, you know, the feeling's mutual, like getting to be in connection digitally as I do. But, you know, actually tuning into your energetic and being in conversation even across the planet. You know, you yourself are so multidimensional, truly multidimensional. And I hang out with a lot of multidimensional people, so I can feel your mastery, and that solo journeying is so important. And you know, we share that. I've done a lot of solitude myself, and now, you know, get to be in this beloved community online and in person of just superheroes and galactic, you know, fairies and unicorn pegasi and just celestial badasses that, you know, I see out there. And so, yeah, love what you're doing. Thank you for the Peacock Diamond activation. Thank you for what you're doing out there in the world. And I see it. And yeah, like, recognize, like.
Yes. Mastery, recognize mastery. Soul recognizes soul.
Yes.
So good. Well, thank you so much for joining me today and creating the space to share this experience with me. I'm super excited for the moment when our constellations align in real time. It's going to be marvelous and magical.
Yeah, I look forward to that. Thank you so much for inviting me and holding the space. This is amazing. A lot of people are going to really enjoy this.
Oh yeah, so much goodness and benefit for everyone, I'm sure. And we love you guys too so much. Thank you for tuning in and exploring and playing with us. And yeah, we shall connect again soon. So much love for you.
Ciao.
Okay, bye.